Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A quick reminder of our top stories now. Military confirms over 500 Boko Haram insurgents set to commence de-radicalization in Gombe after surrendering to troops, the largest number since the beginning of the program in 2015. U.S. Department of Justice slams Airpeace CEO Alan Oyema with bank fraud charges, of course, to the tune of $20 million. Airline boss denies charges and says that he has never committed bank fraud anywhere. Acclaimed author Chimamanda Adichie restrains her commitment to the pursuit of gender equality after emerging as first Nigerian to win the United Nations Global Leadership Award for her works in literature. And over 20 people die in landslides caused by flooding in Kenya's West Pokot County as severe weather threatens the region. For more information on our top stories, please visit our website. It's channelstv.com. youtube.com/channelsweb has videos of our shows. The mention of illegal refineries immediately brings one region of the country to mind, the Niger Delta. But there appears to be a shift in that trend as the Department of Petroleum Resources has uncovered 3 illegal refineries in faraway Kano State, northwest of Nigeria. During the raid, jointly carried out by the operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, the NSCDC, the controller operations of DPR, Musa Tambol, said the activities of the operators have also posed environmental hazards in the region. Our correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that the identified areas have been sealed off.
Although not a part of the oil-rich Niger Delta region, this place has hosted illegal oil refining activities for some time now. In the Hotoro residential area, one illegal base for transloading of diesel is discovered and sealed off. 2 unauthorized facilities for production of adulterated heavy petroleum product was uncovered in Larabar Abasawa Road, and 1 illegal diesel depot was discovered in Hadija Road.
You see all some facilities that are used in processing a particular grade of petroleum products. And this location is not known to DPR, and I don't think it's known to even the state government. So therefore, since it is a petroleum product, DPR has every right to find out whether it's a licensed facility or environment for storage and processing of what is going on here.
Officials of the agency, accompanied by operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, stormed this place where another illegal diesel refining is taking place. Some arrests are made on the spot. Meanwhile, the DPR has introduced a digital quantity measuring device and on-the-spot product quality analyzer to help regulate the increase in reported cases of under-dispensing of the product at some filling stations across the states. And as Harmattan season approaches, the DPR is warning petroleum marketers on safe handling of petroleum products to avoid fire disaster. Although the DPR is confident that some remarkable achievement is being recorded in checking illegal oil and gas activities in the region, residents believed that the agency has a long way to go in this regard, as there exist many other similar activities taking place in Kano and Jigawa states. Idris Jibrin, Channels Television News.
To politics, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, has called on the President Muhammadu Buhari to address the issue of violence during elections. In a statement, the main opposition party faulted the violence incident recorded in the just concluded governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states, adding that President Muhammadu Buhari should focus on that instead of talking about the third term, which it said had come to a dead end. The president yesterday said he had no third term agenda during a meeting of the All Progressives Congress National Executive Committee in Abuja. He asked the party's leaders to prepare for the next general elections, a statement the PDP describes as coming from the president's well-informed fears that the APC might not survive his tenure. And staying with those electoral matters, the idea of conducting a free, fair and credible election where votes count is the desire of most electorate in Nigeria. However, most elections in Nigeria have fallen short of this expectation, with criticisms from voters as well as observer groups who believe that the will of the people are subverted. The most recent elections conducted in Nigeria are the Kogi and Bayelsa state elections. The results of these elections have also come under heavy criticisms by some. Our next report focuses on what some activists say is the problem with elections in Nigeria and what needs to be done going forward.
It's 1 week after the conduct of the Kogi and Bayelsa states elections, which held on November the 16th this year. Although those elections have been won and lost, their outcome were heavily criticized by some observer groups.
These people had free movement, they disrupted elections, and those who've done that are known to the law, and they must be held responsible, they must be prosecuted, and there has to be consequences. Our position is, because of state complicity, people feel they can do whatever they want without consequences.
There was a disconnect of the security architecture of the 2019 governorship elections in Bayelsa State and the reality on ground as observed by our coalition as violent crimes, conspiracy to sabotage the nation state of Nigeria was displayed without recourse to laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria nor the fundamental human rights of citizens.
Drawing from the lessons learned in all the post-1999 elections in Nigeria, some leaders of political pressure groups believe that more still need to be done with the country's electoral laws if future elections are to be credible than they are currently.
The president needs to understand that he has to leave a good legacy. I think the legacy at this time is very, very bad. This president needs to realize that this country needs electoral reform. What has been proposed is what could help to trigger huge improvements in the electoral process, and he needs to drive it, he needs to push it and get it to pass. There are proposals at this time pending in the National Assembly, some bills within the National Assembly for electoral reform, and I think that all persons concerned should work in concert to try to clean up our electoral process. Nobody will be saved if this process collapses, and the way we are going with Kogi, elections in 2023 would be very, very catastrophic.
I think it's very critical that we introduce an amendment to our electoral law that confers more legality on the guidelines issued by INEC and perhaps bring it to be at par with the Electoral Act. The third critical issue and at the heart of reforms to the electoral law is around electoral offenses. And we need an electoral offenses commission that needs to be established to try every form of electoral offense.
Elections are the only legitimate means of choosing political leaders in a true democracy. Hence, some political actors in Nigeria believe that it is important that the electoral laws are strengthened to enable votes count.
The just concluded Kogi and Bayelsa elections have remained a big issue of concern in Nigeria's electoral process, as some believe that the process was fraught with violence and electoral malpractices, while others say that everything went well with the poll. Let's discuss this further, and we're now being joined live from our Abuja studios by the program manager, Yiaga Africa, Ms. Cynthia Mbamalu. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on the news at 10. The Kogi State Bayelsa elections have remained a subject, of course, of great discussion even as we speak at this moment, given that Nigeria expected that it will be an improvement from past elections. What's your own assessment of the elections as performed by INEC?
Kogi and Bayelsa actually I would call that a missed opportunity for us as a people to change our trajectory in building our electoral democracy. And that is because from the 2019 elections and the experiences of the general elections, there were lots of hope that some things would be different in Bayelsa and Kogi. But we lost that opportunity. If it followed the report, and we were in the field in both Bayelsa and Kogi, and we had seen electoral process that are taking us way back than we ever planned. One, beyond the Electoral Commission, beyond the planning from the Electoral Commission, there were also the complicity on the part of the security agencies to even secure the process. So, for instance, we had lots of reports of electoral violence in both states. We had thugs taking over the day in both states. And then you still had the perennial challenges of late commencement in states like Bayelsa, which is usually has been a major challenge in that particular state when it comes to conducting elections. So you'd have an electoral process where voters' rights, the right to vote, was not guaranteed and safeguarded because citizens' lives were at risk. Voters that came out to vote became victims of electoral malpractice and of political thuggery. And then you also had situations like in Bayelsa State where some polling units could not open because materials were hijacked at the commencement of polls on the day of the elections. So we still have these major challenges with the electoral process. The political parties did not play fair. Our report has shown from the pre-elections observation process that we
just before, my apologies, just before you skip to that one, let me just quickly butt in and get your point on that one. What would you say then must be done for us to completely depart from violence in the elections process?
Well, this is the opportunity. We have an opportunity for electoral reform and to go back to the electoral amendment bills that we have before the National Assembly. Recently, the bill had passed the second reading. One, the issue of deployment of the technology to promote electoral integrity is very critical and key. The role the security agencies would also play in the elections is also key and important for us, and also the role of the Electoral Commission, the independence of INEC itself in the conduct of elections. They are very important. So if you want to look at three broad issues, you look at deployment of elections, of technology, you look at the role of political parties, internal party democracy, and also regulating party conduct within the elections, and then the process of elections results and collation. Those are very critical issues to look at when it comes to electoral reform. And this is an opportunity because the election 2023 is barely 2 years away from us. And this is an opportunity we have to go back to our drawing board, to reconsider the proposals before the National Assembly, even look at new things that we can introduce in the electoral amendment bills, and to have the president sign it this time around. This is a time for the president to leave a legacy for electoral reform in Nigeria, because we cannot continue with this and with this trajectory. Next year, we have Edo and Ondo, for instance, and it's important we look into that. So let's take, for instance, the deployment of technology. The proposed bill before the National Assembly looks at e-collation and transmission of results from polling units, which is one thing we think is critical because, one, you need that system to support or complement the paper trail system that you have already ongoing. In cases like we had in Bayelsa, where some polling units did not have elections, but results were declared. Now, if we had such a system to checkmate that, what you would see is when you have results from pollings where elections did not hold, you wouldn't have such results transmitted, and that way you can checkmate that particular process. Then the power of the returning officer. By the current Electoral Act, Section 68, gives the returning officer such a huge power in the sense that whatever results are declared, it's only the tribunal or the court that can overturn it. That what happens is when results are declared either under duress or where they are falsely declared, you cannot do anything. You only have to wait to go to the court. And we are having a process where our elections are consistently being decided in the courts. And that is not a process, that is not a system we want to adopt, considering the fact that you have lots of cases going to the courts, and at the end of the day, several certificates of return are retrieved from candidates after elections are far concluded. So these are major issues that we need to look into and consider before the next elections. And I believe the legislative agenda for this next assembly, electoral reform, needs to become a major priority issue. Then the implementation of enforcement of our laws when it comes to punishing electoral offenders. What we have seen in Kogi and Bayelsa, we need to see reports of persons who have been arrested and indicted and prosecuted, because we can no longer have a system that promotes impunity where citizens' lives are people
that's a good place to let it rest. I am afraid that we have to bring it to a close at this time. I must thank you so much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us. Cynthia Mbamalu, the program manager of Yaga Africa. Many thanks indeed for talking to us here on the News at 10. When the News at 10 returns, Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee expected to hold interest rates at its last meeting for 2019 next week amidst high inflation rates and tight liquidity. That's on business news. Join us again.